All right, now with all of this stuff going on, it's not looking good for the WNBA right now. I will say it is helping that Unravel's ratings are absolutely atrocious and embarrassing. But all in all, it seems like a lot of these ladies that the WNBA has helped, because at the end of the day, they have not been making money. The WNBA has
not looking good. And that's an understatement, because what's unfolding isn't just another WNBA controversy. This is an existential crisis. The league that Caitlin Clark rescued in 2024 now teeters on the edge of collapse, driven by the very players she helped elevate. And the cruelest irony, they're the ones holding the knife.
Where it could be death, okay? The first one is, okay, the WNBA and WNBPA agreed on a groundbreaking CBA in 2020, okay? So they agreed on that CBA. That was cool. Now, this was important.
Things ESPN just broke down 11 specific events that led the WNBA to this exact moment, where the Players Association and the league are locked in a total impasse over the CBA. But here's what ESPN won't say outright. 3 of those 11 events matter more than the rest combined, and one of them changes everything. Let me walk you through the timeline that brought us here, because understanding how we arrived at this moment is the only way to grasp why this could genuinely be the end of Caitlin Clark in the WNBA.
The WNBA announced the bubble season. Now, that was during a crazy time in the world. They started the wobble, and they played games. And Kathy Engelbert, for y'all that don't know, Kathy Engelbert had to beg these players to play, or there would be no more WNBA. A lot of these players wanted all of their money up front plus extra. Kathy Engelbert got that done. A lot of these players was willing to let this league die out in
June 2020. Remember the bubble season? Most fans don't know the story, but it's crucial. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert didn't just ask players to join, she begged them. Because without that bubble season, without games being played during the pandemic, the WNBA would have vanished. Players demanded full salaries paid immediately, plus hazard pay bonuses. The league was bleeding money. Engelbert somehow made it happen, convinced them to play, and kept the league alive. And here's the part that matters now. Many of those same players who almost let the league die in 2020 are the ones making demands that now seem impossible.
Okay? That's a big deal, because that shifts the balance of power between the private owners that just own WNBA teams and the owners that own WNBA, NBA teams. And now you have this investor group in that situation, that extra 16% that shift the balance in power. Something else that happened was the Liberty were fined for illicit chartering. Now, being that, so the New York Liberty got fined $500,000 for doing their own private chartering. The owner did whatever.
February 2022 brings us the capital raise. $75 million from new investors and existing owners. At the time, it was the largest capital injection in women's sports history. Sounds like a win, right? But there's a catch. The WNBA surrendered 16% equity to that investor group. Now you've got 3 ownership factions. 42% owned by WNBA-only team owners, 42% owned by NBA owners who also control WNBA teams, and 16% owned by outside investors. That shift in the power structure matters deeply in the current negotiations. Because when 3 groups with 3 different priorities must agree on how to split revenue, the path to compromise becomes dangerously narrow fast.
That was an issue, okay? In 2023, the Aces kickstart facilities race, all right? So now you see you starting to see these teams put this money into these facilities, right? Now the Aces have a really great owner who's willing to spend money on the best coaches, the best facilities. He'll fly in private on his own. He's willing to do things that other owners wasn't. Now, we are about to get to the big part right here, okay? All right.
Then you've got the Liberty getting hit with a $500,000 fine for chartering flights. Their owner, Jotsai, chose to fly the team privately because he could afford it and because he wanted to give his players a competitive edge. The league responded, no, that's not allowed. That creates an unfair advantage. $500,000 fine. Meanwhile, The Las Vegas Aces owner, Mark Davis, is building state-of-the-art facilities, hiring top coaches, and doing everything possible to create a championship infrastructure. Some owners are willing to spend, others aren't. And that gap has been building tension for years, until now.
Yada, yada, yada. This was the biggest part right here. And this, I believe, is one of, if not the biggest thing in why we are at this point, is because of this brilliant young lady here, Caitlin Clark. April 2024, Caitlin Clark drafted into WNBA. Spotlight intensifies. Remember that. Spotlight intensifies. Fresh off a record-breaking senior season at Iowa, Clark was drafted #1 in the 2024 draft by the Indiana Fever.
Now we get to April 2024, and this is where everything shifts. This is the moment that changes how all the other moments are interpreted. Caitlin Clark gets drafted #1 overall by the Indiana Fever. Night coverage averages 2.45 million viewers, not for the game, for the draft. People tuned in just to hear her name called and watch what jersey she'd wear. That's the level of star power we're talking about. The WNBA had never seen anything remotely close, and the league had no idea how to handle it. They didn't know how to protect her. They didn't know how to market around her properly. They didn't know how to manage the spotlight she brought. But they definitely knew how to capitalize financially on everything she generated.
At this point, because I don't believe that without Caitlin Clark, they would have the demands that they have. Period. Weeks later, the league announced it was transitioning to a full-time chartering program. Weeks later, yeah, some teams was flying private on back-to-backs. They was flying private for the finals. Weeks later, after Caitlin Clark gets drafted, everybody flying private, every game. What we talking about? What we talking about? She changed this thing, man. She changed.
Here's the thing about Caitlin Clark's impact that people need to understand. It wasn't just about ratings and attendance, though those numbers were historic. It was about shifting the entire expectation of what WNBA players believed they deserved. Weeks after Clark was drafted, the league announced full-time charter flights for every team. Not just for playoffs. Not just for back-to-backs. Every flight. That's millions in added operating costs that the league suddenly found in the budget. Why? Because the optics of their biggest star flying commercial while getting physically targeted every game would have been a disaster. Charter flights had been something players demanded for years because of health and safety concerns. The league said it wasn't financially feasible. Then Caitlin Clark arrives, and suddenly it's not only feasible, it's mandatory. That changed everything about what players thought was possible.
Of the spots rise in popularity, other college stars such as fellow 2024 draftee Angel Reese and more recently Paige Beckers also brought in significant followings. I will argue the Paige Beckers thing because Paige Beckers can't draw no ratings in Unravel. Paige Beckers had the third lowest attendance in all of the WNBA in Dallas last year. I don't believe Paige is the big star y'all try to make her to be. I just think Paige is a great, great basketball player, but that's just me. It became clear Clark was sort of a rising tide that helped lift all.
This season are genuinely insane. She drove the highest attendance in league history. Viewership records kept falling. The WNBA finals between New York and Minnesota pulled the best ratings in 25 years. And Clark wasn't even playing in those finals. She was a rising tide lifting every boat. Angel Reese got attention. Paige Beckers entered the league with massive hype. But let's be clear about something. Paige Beckers had the third lowest attendance average in Dallas last season. Her unmatched ratings right now are actually weak. The idea that there are multiple stars on Clark's level is marketing spin, not reality. Clark is the star, singular, and everyone in the league knows it, even if they won't admit it publicly. Interview.
This is not about rivalries or iconic personalities fueling a business model. WNBPA Executive Director Terry Jackson said in a statement, "This kind of toxic fandom should never be tolerated or left unchecked. It demands immediate action and frankly should have been addressed long ago." So you had all of this nonsense. Now you got everybody calling all Clark fans racist, no matter what skin color they are. Now, Caitlin Clark comes in, brings in all this fanfare, all this money. Boom, WNBA secures a monumental media deal. Okay, $2.2 billion deal with Disney.
Then comes the media rights deal. $2.22 billion over 11 years with Disney, Amazon Prime Video, and NBC Universal. That's not a typo. $2.22 billion with a B.4 context. The previous media deal was worth roughly $50 million total over multiple years. This new deal is 20 times larger, and it happened directly because of what Caitlin Clark did to WNBA viewership in 2024. Players saw that number and immediately started doing the math. If the league is getting $2.22 billion and we're only getting a small slice, something has to change. That's when the Players Association opted out of the existing CBA. They wanted to renegotiate immediately while they had leverage.
So now players is seeing the money, right? 2024, the players opt out of the previous CBA. Now, they might not even opted out. They may have opted out with or without Caitlin Clark. They damn sure wouldn't have the demands that they have right now without Caitlin Clark, but they may not have even opted out. Okay, boom, 2025 Unrivaled launches. Now, we know that Unrivaled was trying to get the WNBA out of here. We know that. They was trying to get them out of here, but it's 3-on-3 and the ratings are absolutely garbage right now. So that didn't work. That didn't work at all. Okay.
Now, here's where it gets messy. Unrivaled launched in January 2025. Brianna Stewart and Nneka Agwamike's 3-on-3 league was marketed as a domestic off-season option for WNBA players so they wouldn't have to go overseas. Sounds noble, right? But there was a deeper strategy. Unrivaled was also positioning itself as leverage against the WNBA. If players had another legitimate league option, even if it was just 3-on-3, that changes the negotiating power. The problem? Unrivaled's ratings have been absolutely brutal. They're pulling 300,000 viewers on a good night. For comparison, Caitlin Clark's regular season Fever games were averaging over 1 million. The leverage play didn't work because the product isn't compelling enough, and because the one player who could have made it compelling, Caitlin Clark, said, "No thanks."
Called her a liar, and we know everything that took place from that. My point is, these things have led up. Some things more significant than others. That situation where Kathy Engelbert had to pretty much beg the players to play in the bubble, that was big. The Caitlin Clark arriving to this league was the biggest because now it's set an expectation for these players and they're making all kind of demands that they never would be making without her, all while bashing the very people who are bringing in this money that they want to get. They want to bash them, but they want to capitalize off them. And this ultimately are some of the things that could lead to the potential death of Caitlin Clark in the WNBA. Get down.
So where does this leave us? The WNBA and the Players Association are stuck in a deadlock. Negotiations have collapsed. Players want a dramatically larger revenue share. They want guaranteed contracts. They want the salary cap eliminated. They want full free agency. They want everything, and here's the uncomfortable truth. Without Caitlin Clark, they wouldn't have the audacity to ask for most of this. The $2.22 billion media deal doesn't exist without her. The charter flights don't happen without her. The mainstream attention doesn't happen without her. She rewrote the league's financial reality in one season, yet a significant portion of the Players Association spent that same season attacking her fans, allowing her to be physically targeted without consequence, labeling her supporters racist regardless of their actual race, and making it clear they resented her success. Now, those same players want to cash in on the wealth she created while continuing to create a hostile environment around her. And if this CBA negotiation collapses, if we end up with a work stoppage or lockout, the one player with options outside the WNBA is Caitlin Clark. She could play in Europe for triple what the WNBA pays. She could start her own league. She could focus on endorsements and business ventures. She doesn't need the WNBA, but the WNBA desperately needs her. The Players Association seems to have forgotten that basic fact. They're negotiating like they have leverage when the reality is their leverage walked in because of one player, and that same player could walk right back out if the environment doesn't improve. This could genuinely mark the end of the Caitlin Clark era in the WNBA. Not because she wants to leave, but because the league and the players have created conditions where leaving might be her best option. And if she goes, that $2.22 billion media deal suddenly looks like an enormous price for content that won't deliver the viewership numbers that justified it. The players wanted to be valued like professional athletes. Caitlin Clark made that possible, and their response has been to bite the hand that feeds them while demanding it feed them more. That's not a sustainable strategy. That's not how you build a league. That's how you destroy one. We're at a crossroads. Either the Players Association realizes their interests are tied to protecting and promoting their biggest star, or they continue down this path of resentment and unrealistic demands. If it's the latter, we may look back at 2024 as both the peak and the beginning of the end of the WNBA's mainstream moment. Because here's the reality: Caitlin Clark gave this league something it never had before. Relevance. Real, mainstream cultural relevance. The kind of attention that transcends sports fans and reaches casual viewers who'd never watched women's basketball before. That's rare. That's valuable. That's irreplaceable, and it can disappear just as fast as it arrived if the people benefiting from it don't wise up and recognize what they have before it's gone. The clock is ticking. Negotiations are stalled. And every day this drags on is another day closer to Caitlin Clark deciding she's done dealing with a league that refuses to protect her while profiting from her. What happens if she walks away? Does the WNBA survive losing the one player who made mainstream America care? Or does this whole house of cards collapse back to where it was before she arrived? Drop your prediction in the comments, because this story is far from over.